because that's where like I feel like the fear turns off for me, and it's more about
snatching that moment where you can see it and then going.
Kids will be able to eventually have enough experience that they're able to navigate through different types of risks. If that was what was just being projected and being polarized, you might even have more buy-in from parents pushing their kids towards parkour.
Do you need risk or danger to fully enjoy parkour?
And I also like the fact that it's like a pretty girl that like won't talk to me right now. I don't know if that analogy is gonna go over well with the listeners.
So I saw you on the board the other day.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Back on the board.
Yeah. Well, like since June 26th, 2023 was when my knee just blew up like a watermelon, essentially. And I haven't done anything leisure. I said leisure activity in the post, but I was able to get out on the board. That's almost, I don't know, like 7 months now or more. So felt good to cruise around, just be doing something that isn't confined within the gym walls, you know, because that's realistically all the physio and like all the working out and stuff. It's just like kind of, as much as I do enjoy that stuff, it's like nice to get out on a board, you know?
Yeah. So I don't want to make this talk today an injury talk. We have enough of those, and it's kind of, I personally get tired of talking about it.
Fair, yeah.
And I haven't gotten any complaints from viewers or listeners, but yeah, I think it's there's personal fatigue, as I'm sure you sometimes get as well. But you are in a similar boat as I was a year and a bit ago.
That's right, yeah. Really similar, actually. Yeah. Except I'm like previous surgery. So we are knee bros. You know, we're knee bros. Is yours left knee? Yeah. So we are definitely knee bros. But I, in 2010, had full ACL reconstruction and meniscus repair. But this time around, it was just some activity. I was starting to get back into like really good groove of things, and my knee blew up, like I said, and no specific injury, and went and had an MRI, and there was like a piece of bone, like the size of like a ping pong ball in my knee. So that had to get removed. And then when they were in there during the arthroscopy, they were able to do like cleanup of my knee and then actually put sutures in both my medial and lateral meniscus. So I'm really happy they didn't just fully remove those things. They were able to repair them. But in saying so, when you do that type of invasive repair, the recovery time is much longer, as you know. Like I was non-weight bearing for nearly 6 weeks. I kind of cheated that a little bit as the stubbornness kind of kicked in. But it's going really well. Like I'm starting to lift back to where I was. I'm getting into single and double leg plyometrics and getting back out on my board too, right? So hopefully when it all happened, I put a date in my calendar and it says start parkour. And that's slowly approaching.
So you haven't passed it yet?
I haven't passed it yet.
Okay.
Yeah, so that date is why I'm kind of ramping up some of my strength and conditioning right now, because I'm going to start taking some parkour practice on. Just little tastes of it, not like going to bite off anything I can't chew, but that's so I have that date, it's there, and you'll know when the date happens, I guess, realistically.
Okay, so I want to get back to the like returning to parkour thing. Because that's going to get us into our main topic for today. But before we do, because I'm actually glad that you just mentioned a couple of the differences there with like your knee, my knee. One of the things that I've kind of grown to hate coming out of injury is I think people really want to relate. And I can sympathize with it because you don't want to be, something traumatic has happened to you, you had surgery, you had an injury, whatever. But even just the other day, like Mateo, who is my film homie.
Oh yeah. I know Mateo.
He tweaked his knee snowboarding, and he like there's a clip, and he just messages me right away, and he's like, "Yo, could you walk right after?" And it's just like this thing where I don't even think I'm necessarily that special. I think every case is special. There are so much, particularly with knee injuries, but we could even go into ankles, shoulders, hips, whatever. There's so many nuances and small differences, and differences of millimeters or more can be quite dramatic. Like how you present before an injury can change things, and it's tough. It's tough to respond to people because one, it's like I'm not an expert. Two, what happened to me is probably way different than what's going to happen to you or could happen to you, and it's this whole thing. I think I can speak on recovery and mindset and those sort of things, but when it comes down to like specifics of injury, it's weird. I don't know if you've encountered this issue or
yeah, absolutely. Like people, you talk to them, oh yeah, I did that too, and it's like, did you? And you're like, cool, right? Like I don't know what to say there sometimes, but I agree. Like being athletic and somebody who's done something to any extremity, ligament, whatever, your say for instance knee, like your quad development is way different. The way in which somebody tests out, they start wiggling around, it's going to be way different than somebody who's like in their 60s with like muscle degeneration. Like, yeah, you'll probably be able to tell their ACL at that age is torn. Me, I have a lot more reactive muscle tissue that potentially won't show it unless you get an image. So yeah, for people who are like to inquire things like that, it's like, dude, go see a doctor. It's like, I don't know. Like, yeah.
The other layer to it actually that really, it kind of got to me when I was like recovering is when people are like trying to be encouraging, but it's a bit too much where they already set the expectation. Like I got a lot of like, you'll be back or like, you got this. And that's really rough because you're going through your own sort of process there of like, will I? And you and I are probably like, we're both stubborn guys, and so we're gonna do 110% and go above and beyond.
Well, it's
what
actually
maybe like everybody would do to try to get back to the thing.
Yeah, that I was gonna give you big kudos because you went through that and stuck to resilience. I mean, look at the title there of the video. That's pretty amazing. I was like, when this happened, I was sitting on like, a minute of footage thinking, I'm going to start thinking about a project here. And just to that, like what you're speaking about is like, oh, you'll be back stronger than ever. I kind of gave up on that thought and said, you know what, like I might not be, and that's okay. But I'm sitting on this footage and it's killing my brain right now. So I just like posted it, whatever. Not as if like I have millions of eyes on me anyways, but it's like, I just had to get rid of that stuff. So kudos to you for hanging on to stuff that you had and like that you went through with your healing process to going and achieving some of the bigger challenges afterwards, which is like, hey, that's inspiring for a guy who's a fellow knee bro, we're fellow knee bros. So maybe I got to think about a project after or something. I don't know. We'll see.
I think so. Part of the reason why I wanted to do a video in the first place was in hopes that, more people, particularly just in the local scene, would want to, right? And I think I've already kind of had that effect on some of the younger guys too, but even,
Yeah, no, totally. Like, the first ever thing I was able to do with Origins, and maybe we wanted to talk about some of those things, but like when I did alternate routes, the whole concept there was like, my progression in a short time, I wanted to display that and like how Origins has helped me with that. But also too is like showcasing Vancouver. I came out here and like, this is a completely different environment, landscape for me. And then I'm practicing these new skills. And I think that like you put that way above like that concept is like not only what you have accumulated as far as skill over time, but displayed Vancouver. You put Vancouver like out there, which was like, I think like you see some local projects that have happened so far, the ones that are notable. And I really appreciate that, like whether it's with Tom with displaying UBC or Jules and his like intricate movement in different nooks and crannies of the city. I think that that's really exciting, especially when they get like eyes on it outside of the community, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like every scene wants to really be like the parkour capital, the UK, or more specifically places like Brighton, London proper, where there's iconic spots and you can watch a video and know like that's where it is, and that's what's been done there. But you can't say that really about many other places in the world. I'm trying to think like Lisbon.
Maybe Lisbon. I would even say like Spain. There's a couple of like cities in Spain that when you see the walls and they're not saying exactly where they are, you kind of know they're either in like Barcelona or Madrid, maybe, you know.
Yeah.
Like, but yeah, you're right. Like I think that's something in the skate scene that's very much like prevalent. Like you know that was that ledge or that set of stairs, and you know like the history behind it. So it'd be cool to see that progression, I guess, you know, in regards to parkour, where that takes you. I don't know how that happens, but yeah.
Well, we got this kid training at the gym, but also outside pretty much every day right now, Seth Moon.
Oh, right.
And he posted a picture the other day where he was like standing at the Pacific Center cat leap.
I saw that.
And he said summer goal. And I was like,
yeah.
And it's funny because that was 100% like what I was hoping to get out of a lot of the lines was each line needed to have kind of a crux or like a difficult part of the line, and just to kind of set something at each spot so that younger generations would come back and say, like, okay, this was what's done. I have to one up that.
Yeah, like how would he do it, right? And he's a very capable kid. Like I've seen him.
I would like to see him do something harder. That is in fact that spot in the that's actually I would say maybe the easiest spot to do the gap.
Right.
So
okay.
There's actually harder spots within that, like the different entrances to that shopping mall where there's bigger cat leaps.
Yeah,
or
cool.
scarier ones. So
yeah, that whole neighborhood has those underground like areas. Like there's over by the courthouse as well too, and it's not as much like fenced on top of slab or like upright slab. It's like just full slab.
Yeah.
I think Mish might have tried something there maybe in the past. I thought you said, or maybe you said you thought he'd be the only one to do something there.
So much of it was like, man, no one's hit this yet.
Yeah.
And then it just comes down to like, shoot, is it gonna be me?
Yeah.
Is it gonna be old ass post surgery me? That's the first one. You know,
I mean, such a sorry way to look at it.
Well, I could have brought any number of the athletes that visit during like SPL to do.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, your weekend's so cooped up at that point, like to do parkour tourism for a number of athletes who are just kicking it and trying to organize them all. Like, man, that's chaos for you. So I don't anticipate you trying to wrangle everybody to show them all the spots around the city. Yeah. But
okay, so I want to go back to what you were just saying about coming to Vancouver, right?
Yeah.
So you had started doing a bit of parkour in Toronto?
Yeah, like I live just outside of Toronto, but for about a year I was practicing and like absorbing. Like I was on YouTube so much for my first year. I felt like it was like part of my previous athletic experience to like analyze film almost. You know, I played football at university, so it was like a big part of that is analyzing film. So not only was I trying to learn and the old Jesse tutorials and, you know, Jesse LaFleur, tutorials and all those things, but like also just like I was really heavily inspired by like Oleg, like obviously out of time. Like, so this is 2014 when I started. I'd been doing calisthenics with some, you know, friends and stuff like that, but not parkour specifically. And and I found videos like Out of Time, and one that really got to me for whatever reason was like People in Motion. I don't know if you remember that, like Paul Whitecotton.
Yeah,
like it's kind of a cheesy documentary, but honestly, like when you're first starting, it hits home. And I started at an older age, I guess, for typical. Like I started at 27, and those two videos had a really big impact. And then knowing about the like really being Canadian proud, like I'm proud, like I like being Canadian. I looked into the Canadian scene, and Origins was a big part of like I've been watching. I'm a long time STS watcher. You could probably go back before I even lived in Vancouver, and I was making comments on videos. So to be here today is kind of exciting, to be honest with you. But no, like the remix and all those things, they all had influence on my first year before coming to Vancouver. And then when my ex-wife and I decided we wanted to move here, it was like almost a no-brainer in where my love was going for parkour. So I was like, yeah, let's go. And it was like 2 days after we got here, I was in class learning underbars with Alyssa, you know, like it's like, it was destined to be, I guess, right?
I think you're one of those unique cases too, where you're very athletic, right? Like you came from we could have a longer conversation at some point about like how much of that was what you were exposed to or what you were doing versus how much is genetic or whatever the case. But I always find it interesting because I think, how old were you at the time when you moved out here?
Oh, yeah. So I would have been 29, just turning, 29.
And I know some of our listeners that have got into parkour in the last like 10 years were probably older than that. But I do think that a lot of people would consider that already like a late time to start parkour, and particularly to be starting parkour and trying to get like really good at it,
Right,
like,
right, yes.
I say really good as in like a dynamic sense. Like I'm going to be trying to do the quintessential things that you see in parkour, like the big scary challenges and flips and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so you were able to like build quite a bit of a base, like I would say quite quickly compared to myself starting at like age 17.
Right. Yeah. I always, and I when I was coaching did this as well too, where I always tried to look at how a tutorial was being taught or a coach was trying to present something to me and think about it from previous sporting experience. So like a great example of that is like 180ing, like 180 cats or 180 like bounce backs or whatever it is, 180. Well, in football or in basketball or soccer, we're often backpedaling and having to change direction by opening hip direction and pointing your knee and having a knee drive, depending on your angles and things of that nature. So I always like did things like that as like cues, because even with students, you have students coming in here, they have other sporting backgrounds. So it might not be a cue for every student, but you could say, hey, you play basketball? Yeah, I play basketball, of course. Okay, think about it this way, right? And for me, that always worked. And I think it helped me progress quicker. So again, I know what you're saying about like athletic ability, yes. But I think it's also about there's being a good coach, but there's being a good student as well too. And for whatever reason, parkour clicked for me enough that I wanted to be not only a good athlete, but a good student as well too in my learning process of it all, right? So yeah. I also had goals. Like I wanted to come here and get the attention of Origins. I had goals, maybe not to be a coach exactly, but I wanted to be involved some way. And I think I've shown that, right? Like getting involved with SPL or just getting like with coaching or in the media side of things with Origins. Like I always kind of maybe vocally a bit about that, but also silently like knew coming here, like, okay, like if it doesn't happen, that's good. That's okay. Cause I'm always with that mindset, but that would be like really fun, like to get involved somehow. Right.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It's tricky. I think a lot of people have the same sort of mindset when they get into parkour and start to pick it up really quickly. It's not built out the same way other sports are, where you have like tiers of amateur and then like pro or whatever. And so the easiest thing is like, okay, who's top dog here, and how do I get in like the respect of them or whatever? And I always feel like I have like a target on my back for that, which is like, and I've never been top dog when it comes to ability. Never, not since the day I started doing parkour. It has always been catch up. Like when the scene here started, there were a bunch of guys that I was looking at like, holy crap, they can do that with their bodies. Okay, cool. How do I get to there? And then one by one they quit, but then everybody that replaces them quickly like on a level like above me or whatever. And so I'm always playing catch up. But I am the guy who is like moving the needle on the local scene when it comes to the gym, when it comes to jams, when it comes to just getting things moving, getting people together and getting things moving. And so I often feel like I have a target on me, and people sometimes present themselves very weird to me. Right. Where it's like very clear. I probably
did that at the beginning. I probably did that.
I think you were very friendly. But a lot of kids will just try to, and I say kids, but it's like 19-year-olds, 20-year-olds, they'll basically try to like do a challenge or a trick like right in front of me and make sure I see it. That sort of thing is like super weird.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Fair. Yeah. I mean, I meant more so just that I'm like, and I know this full well. It's not as if like I'm just coming to some revelation. I'm pretty boisterous. I'm noisy. I project myself pretty loudly. And if I see myself in you or us being friends, I'm gonna probably make sure that happens.
Yeah.
That's just who I am.
This is the one episode where I'm gonna have to bring down, like in editing, bring down your mic. Yeah. Usually I'm bringing mine down a little bit, but I think I'm gonna have to.
It just makes some more work for you. That's all it is, really. Yeah, that's good.
AI tools for sound are pretty good. So
nice.
We're set. Okay, so you get to Vancouver. We start to hit it off with some of the local scene, get in there, you start coaching. There's a certain point in time where you started getting into a specific type of movement, I feel like, more than anything else. And it's like the whole like descent boom, right?
Right.
And I don't even know if you were around when like Dylan Baker started doing it, or if it was like much after that when it became like a more popular thing, similar to like pole slides right now, where it's like you can turn on Instagram, although it is dying a bit. But like there was a certain point maybe a month ago where you could turn on Instagram and you just seen everyone jumping at poles. There was a certain point in time where you could turn on Instagram and like everyone is just dropping down balconies.
So true. I mean, you mentioned Dylan Baker. He wasn't it wasn't somebody at the beginning of my practice that I was following. I mean, I remember seeing him on NAPC competitions and whatnot. Like, I mean, streaming those things and watching from back in Toronto even, I remember. But as far as like his practice, as well as like Brandon, the guys like that Colorado scene, that came further when I found out that like Dylan was blogging or vlogging at the time, right? I think they called it blogging, but vlogging at the time. And so I was able to catch up and just see some of that. Also, too, it was trending. Nick Ortiz, your Joe Scandritz, it was trending at the time. And I think more so than the inspiration, though, it was what came to me through injury. It was like, I remember at one point I was really struggling with some groin issues. I'm gonna say it was probably around 2018, 2019. And my groin, like, it would get better, and then all of a sudden I pull it. And then it would get better, like 4 weeks, but by like the 4 week of healing, like I didn't want to push like strides or jumps or like even flow, like even like slide vaults would like bother it. So the only thing that wasn't bothering it was hanging and dropping, like, or going from a rail and figuring out like the ladder style descending. Like it wasn't bothering me. And I've always been like somewhat of a head case, kind of like whether playing football, I was pretty fearless against whatever size person was in front of me, or skateboarding or snowboarding or skiing or whatever it might be. I was kind of always willing to try things, or like kind of not so much send it, but like calculated sending things, right? And I think that's kind of how descents, this is what's kind of popular right now. And also too, Instagram also has an effect. You post a nice descent and you get some comments and views, and you're like, all right, where's the next one? It's like that dopamine rush is real, right? Not to say that was the entire, there's a number of things that kind of go into it, but it also, I really appreciated what it did for me as far as my adventure and my adventure spirit in Vancouver. All of a sudden I found myself on Google Maps and like, I potentially know the Lower Mainland. I'm challenge you, man. I've done my homework in Vancouver. I see people who are like, oh, new spot. I'm like, it's not a new spot, man. It's not a new spot. I've been there. I've checked it out. I mean, maybe not have trained there, so good on you for getting some jumps in. But like, either way, that adventure spirit really got kicked by it, because you wanted to find unique structures to potentially do it on, and not necessarily what you were suggesting with Dylan, what we were seeing, which is like essentially a floor-to-floor drop. But there's so many ways we can descend, Yeah, I think there was a word that, I think it was Brandon Douglas who said around that time, around like the boom, or particularly when he and Dylan were pushing it, they said something, the suggestion of like, people will look at parkour spots, but a lot of times they're not actually looking up. So when we think of like the quintessential parkour spots or spots in general, or places to train, we are looking for relatively like flat terrain with walls, right? We're not looking,
And if we're looking up, we're looking for like gap jumps, but we're not looking for a like vertical face of a building for either either a descent or an ascent. Right.
Yeah. I think that too like comes into play. Like early on I got really mixed up with Tom. Tom and I really became buddies in training.
Mixed up.
I mean, mixed up.
Like he's a drug
I didn't
dealer.
know how to say it. Yeah. Tom had the spots. You get some spots. I'm looking for some spots. No, but that he had a way in which he was looking at different architecture, and it wasn't necessarily just linear. We'd go out and have fun on linear, places. But part of the exploration.
Sorry, linear. You mean
what
like
you're talking about, like your typical atypical parkour spot with walls, wheelchair ramp kind of deal, and rails, that type of thing that are like flat, like you're suggesting, right? But yeah, you may start something like that, jump on the bikes, you go around, you're driving down alleys on your bike, and you're kind of you are looking up and down, and that was something that really heavily influenced me, and I think I influenced him a little bit to a degree as well too, right? Because I think it was a great pairing, actually, because Tom was definitely far above me as far as ability and experience. But I think I have a little bit more of a sendy nature to myself. So I think both of us really fed off that, right? He'd be able to coach me up on things that technique-wise, and I'd be able to encourage him through, break points that are a bit fearful, right? Yeah. So that was kind of a fun dynamic between the two of us, right? But what were we? This happens every podcast, I think, that I've watched.
Yeah, that's okay. I think, I'm just, I think I was more or less just curious what drew you to it ultimately. And I think we kind of captured a little bit of that as well.
Yeah.
Interesting enough, I was actually, I think it was just end of last summer. So summer 2023, went to the like Spiral Garage.
Oh, right. Yeah,
I think there's still some potential there to do some different things with the descent there. Particularly, you might remember like the top of that parking garage actually has some levels that you could do some non-balcony drop type moves to enter into a thing, which I think would be cool. But actually, the lowest level of this, and I think this is actually something that's been...
Can we preface this? Rene's speaking to the step-by-step documentary that I did, right? Yeah. For Origins. So there's a spiral style parking garage with a long drain pipe that went down one side down a column. So it follows a leveling system that you can descend down. And I agree, at the top there is like a traditional kind of look to the environment as far as a parkour spot goes. And I mean, I thought about that, but I think like there was so much going on as far as me hiring somebody to come film me and like, do a bunch of that I just was like, this is about the descent, right? Yeah. But I agree that is, and the other side originally Tom did. He did it from maybe the third level down and then down, and there's like a little like security booth there and down to the security booth and off. And we were there that one day, and I like as we were doing the like bottom levels, and when Tom was doing that, I thought, I'm going to do this from the top. It took time, but it was the intention from that day, right? Yeah.
So we were there, and I was actually with Tom, maybe another couple of people from the gym, and the lowest point, I can't do it.
From the second to like because you can't do it.
Basically the bottom of where you did it.
Really?
And so like there's the prep to the garage you're talking about.
Right.
Like the security booth where you're talking about.
Yeah.
So I can do that. We found another way to prep. If you go to the very top and you go in a bit, there's actually a really great spot where you can prep and actually make it harder, like a further drop.
Oh, wow.
I can do that, but I don't know if it's like vertigo or whatever, but yeah, I couldn't switch off the part of it's very similar to like anything else you do at height, anything else in parkour. There is a certain, I guess, part of you that you need to switch off, and a part or perhaps a part of you that you need to turn on. I don't know enough about how people's brains work. It always seems to me that some people are definitely less hindered. Right. Like you train with someone who's seeming or just doing things at height that you wouldn't do. like you couldn't fathom doing. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny because like that particular one from the top, I watched like, I don't know if you remember when Nick Ortiz and Callum were doing that like pre to like the like wall edge on that parking garage that has all like the graffiti, like pretty like nice painted graffiti. They were doing that pre to that edge. And when I'm watching that, my hands are sweating. Like I'm like freaked out by that. But the movement for me is more unfamiliar, like, or more less confident. I'm less confident in the idea of me plowing like that. Whereas like the drop for me, I think what happened with me is I went into this like mode of repetition that, I mean, I've heard like different psychologists and stuff talk about like muscle memory and how we call it muscle memory, but in actual fact, it's not. It's like it's brain memory. Yeah. And that concept made each level become more and more comfortable. I think the crux for me of that, and which took me 5 sessions, probably about like each session varied from an hour to 2 hours, whatever, just was different every day. So much footage to go through, crazy. But the crux for me was the top 2 levels. Because what happens is the pipe that you support your hands on, it changes sides. Yeah. So I don't know if you remember, but like as you do your first 2 drops, you actually have to switch around the column and then go down. And like the last 3 columns, I was like zipped down so fast. Yeah. So I actually had to come into the gym. I mean, I'm telling about, go watch the documentary, you can see. But no, I had to come into the gym and kind of do a makeshift situation on the opposite side to get familiar with it and do that so much that going up there just seemed like, I guess, muscle memory or second nature or whatever you want to call it. It's that's more was my hump, and often is getting over the like second nature, because that's where like I feel like the fear turns off for me, and it's more about like breathing at that point and focusing in and on the actual task at hand and not letting small nuances get to you. Like we actually, the last day, a car got broken into on like the 3rd level of the garage, and you could hear it smash, and it was like some dude in there, and like I almost called it. I almost called it just because it was throwing me off. What if the cops come? All this stuff, right? Yeah. But those types of things, they get kind of brushed aside when you've had a certain amount of repetition, as I'm sure you know with certain types of your practice too, right?
Absolutely. Like, yeah. Quick housekeeping note. I tried to put links to things in the description on YouTube. And because this is a new channel, there's actually a setup required. I'm going to try again on this video, so hopefully we get a link to
I'll be commenting.
The video
I'll be commenting. Don't you worry. Don't you worry.
So
we gotta get those views up. No, I'm just kidding.
If you're watching this on YouTube, we'll try to get that down below. But yeah, I kind of just wanted to go back to like that first level, because one of the things that I think has been a struggle, at least for me, in trying to, and I've kind of gone less interested, probably because it's less popular now, but like, it was a struggle to basically do any balcony descents. I like to specify balcony descents versus descending movement over things, but like balcony descents, right? In Vancouver is like finding ones that have good ground level preps to get in repetitions, because I've dabbled a bit here and there, and anytime I can find one that does have a ground level prep, I am able to get the reps in, and then it feels more comfortable going up level to level to level. But the spiral run, that one was funny to me because I just was hanging there. And
there is a lot to the hands and everything.
I'm hanging there. I'm looking down. You can see the edge, and I don't know. It's almost, part of it is the height. Part of it is, for whatever reason I have, and if you're not watching this, you're not going to be able to see what I'm doing with my hands here, but it's kind of like ankle thinging.
Right. Well, that's also too, I think, what happens, especially with like your vision when you're looking down, and there is a guardrail on top of the slab. Because I feel like that in your brain is like an issue because you're worried about like clipping the rail before the slab.
Yeah, or it's in the way.
You feel like it's in the way. Yeah. You surprise yourself how much that isn't the case, but there's that visual. It's like when something's above your head and you're never going to hit your head when you're in your 180 or in your jump or whatever it is. But for whatever reason, when you jump, you're still kind of like scrunching up, right? Like,
so
I feel like it's the same kind of feeling, like that.
Yeah.
That your like internal instincts are saying, no, you're gonna clip, and it's like, no, it's like it's fine, right?
Yeah, with projecting descents, I feel like if there's a ground level prep that I can do, then I am confident that I could build up to the next story and then possibly the next story and the next story, or whatever the case. But I've like just struggled to find ones where there's even a ground level to prep. Like even we have probably the most repped one in Vancouver. By the way, no one local has done it.
Oh,
but
right.
the Chinatown.
I've done 2 levels.
Parking garage. Hey, cool, right?
Yeah, it is fear. There's some fear, and you're right. That one is like most repped, I would say.
So I haven't done ground. Like I've gone there and looked at the closest to ground level one.
You're talking the Chinatown Blue Rail, right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and I can't get myself to do the ground level. And funny enough, I've actually ankle thingied on a descent, and it sucked. And it was one where I still had hands, so like just dropping one hand, and I think was being a bit too careless, and it was a savage ankle thingy too. Like it wasn't. I think there's a difference in the. I don't know comment if you've done this on a descent, because I don't hear about it too much, but we're all familiar with it when it comes to precisions, where you're coming in, your ankle flexes more than it should, and you're like, oh, this may have been. I was actually in Hong Kong, and this may have been one of the most like. It wasn't even a very big drop at all, but it's just like it was the vertical force.
Well, your weight, you have your whole weight coming down, it doesn't matter the drop at that point, right? Like,
and I don't know if that just kind of made it bad for me after the fact. Fair. I don't like to use things like this, but
I know some ones with good preps, because you're right. Like that ground level prep, I don't think I've ever really attempted one where there wasn't a ground level prep. I think that's kind of like careless practice for someone like myself. Like I even spoke about it, like there's going to be athletes who show up and can probably project that particular descent in the spiral garage. They're going to do that day. That's fair. It's just not who I am. I needed days. But again, it doesn't necessarily mean that I don't have that like kind of mentality to be able to perform it. It's just I'm real cautious in regards to like I think it's practice from my professional career. What I do, I'm a health and safety manager, by the way, which is very contradictory, especially for my coworkers. Not probably much for you, but But anyways, that kind of mindset comes into my practice where I want to make sure I'm as preventative as much as I can as far as all the risk calculation and whatnot. So ground level prep, which I have a few. So maybe we should, when I'm thinking about this comeback, we get out, maybe get that fear out of.
I'd love to, because it's something where, again, I think the technique to get a little bit of swing in, to do balcony drops, it's not super complicated. I think most people can definitely learn how to do it, but it's a lot of things in parkour are like that, where it's like, it's so simple, this is so small or whatever, but there's all this consequence around it, and so that can really just take it away from you. I like to actually describe things too. I've been saying this for a bit now, where I like to talk about sight and being able to see something, right? Like whether
you're landing or see somebody performing, or both. Looking
at a jump, I'll use this a lot of times when I train now, where I'll look at a jump and I will tell the person I'm training with, like, if I can see it or not. Like I see. What I mean by seeing it is like I can see myself doing it, whether it's in POV or third person or whatever. But like you can be looking at like a good example is like a standing gap jump, and if you can't see it, you're not going to move, right? And sometimes when I have the same feeling, if I'm hanging for a drop, I'm like, oh, I can't see it anymore. Like, oh, I saw it for a second, oh, went away, right? And so much of parkour is like grabbing onto that. Like when I say grabbing, I mean like snatching that moment where you can see it and then going. Right. Because if you don't go when you can see it, like that can quickly disappear.
That gives me chills, man. I don't know, because it's so real. I think it's like, and I was talking earlier about like bringing in perspective from other sport. I think that's not just, you say parkour, but I think that's a lot of sport. Visualize your shot. You see the play before it happens, anticipate where the opponent's going. These types of things all translate to exactly what you're talking about. It's like, I see myself performing that, be from a first person, or like you're over there sitting on the bench watching yourself do it, right? Yeah, and that can quickly go away. Like you said, and hesitancy can put you at harm's way, I think, sometimes too, because some people won't see it anymore but still commit. You know, and that's like that short, like the not incorrect bounce backs or ankle things happen. And I'm certain that's because like you lost it, but still committed, you know? Anyways, yeah. Hard to prove that, but yeah. Don't fact check me.
I wanted to ask about kind of like your return to parkour now. Because we've already mentioned it, like the date. I'm not going to ask the date, but the date's coming up soon.
Yeah.
As you said.
Yeah.
Now, you are capable of doing like parkour right now. Like you could, there's a realm of parkour you could be doing right now. And I just kind of want to be careful how I frame this, because I'm definitely not trying to offend people, but there is a difference. And I feel like I've had two major injuries that I've had to come back from, and I kind of maintain my practice throughout, where it's like, what parkour can I do? And I feel like there's still a point where when I get back to full health, where I want to do a lot of the very dynamic and I'll say risky and like dangerous side of parkour.
Right.
And I'll want to try to push into that. And for me, I have to like retrain it mentally, like everything is scary again. But up until that point, there's kind of just like this fine tuning period where I'm doing all the things that are possible to do with whatever the limitation is. I can take someone like Joe Scandrett right now, who had an Achilles tear, and he can still do pull slides, and there's some various things he can do. I bet he's going to get back into descent drops pretty soon, because if he can do bilateral landings, like he'll figure it out. And that's super wild to me, because it's almost like he doesn't need to retrain the mental. And so maybe he exists somewhere else on the spectrum than I do. Like, I don't pretend to be the same as the people that inspire me, like Store, when they really started doing like roof culture. But even before that, it was like there was a lot of height stuff. You got like guys like Kai Willis, just, you know, legends of the game who are always kind of pursuing heights. And I think I would touch little bits of heights and little bits of gap jumps and little bits of scary things slowly but surely through my like parkour progression, but to the point where I feel like some days I still feel like very much a beginner in regards to parkour. It's like, oh, I have a decent jump, but like I'm not applying it in the same way as these guys, and I just feel like they exist on a higher end of the spectrum than I do. But going back to the topic I kind of wanted to ask you about is, why haven't you right now done the sides, I guess, of parkour that you can do, or try to like explore that more?
Yeah, I have a very interesting personality, and I think it's what allowed me to progress in parkour is like when I'm all in, I'm all in. And I really wanted, being 37, diagnosed with some serious osteoarthritis in my knee, don't want to mess up the repairs that they've done, really wanted to own in on the physical components to that as well as my body. Like I've suffered probably the last like 3 or 4 years with some different issues in my body. And I think like part of that like is just continuing sport. So I wouldn't necessarily say the damage has come from parkour, but it's played into it. And with this particular injury, I just needed to step back and give my headspace to like healing this particular injury. It doesn't necessarily mean I don't add like ground kongs into some of my like caloric burning portions of my workout, but like, or like some of my cardiovascular, I'll do some like ground kongs or like, you know, just some rolls, like shoulder rolls and things like that. But as far as like full on practice, I have avoided it because it deserves a certain amount of headspace from me. And I respect parkour so much in what it's provided for me that when I do return to it, I want to give it the attention that it deserves, right? And I've always been good to be, like, I think that's where you and I always hit it off, was like, I think that you saw that, I was in here doing parkour, but I always wanted to hit the weights and gym and train that way as well too. And doesn't necessarily mean that there won't be room for both. But at this point, it's like my headspace really needs to be in the healing process. And that was really what kind of has kept me from it. And I also like the fact that it's like a pretty girl that like won't talk to me right now too. That's the other side of it. Like, it's like kind of like she's teasing me right now. And she's like, I'll be here when you're ready, kind of, right? And stuff. And it's like, I like that component to it too. Cause like, I really do, like, I'm aware of what's going on in parkour. I'm got my ear to the ground on videos and, you know, and just like watching STS and, you know, store podcasts and all the things that kind of the culture is about. But I've just kind of removed myself from physically practicing for now. And like I said, that's exciting me too as well. The other component is like, I don't necessarily know what my practice will look like when I return and what I'm going to have to, how I'm going to have to adjust. And I'm kind of preparing mentally for that because like that's part of aging. And I know we have lots of students here in Origins and people part of the community are older than me, but I've been doing stuff for a very long time to my body. And my 37 looks different than some people's 37. Just like what you're doing.
I think people don't talk enough about age versus age and training age. There's like, particularly if we're talking about training age as like training age of someone who was trying to perform at like the highest performance level possible with their, you know, genetics or whatever the case, right? Those two things, we could make an equation, you know, to combine those two things. It's like this is how old this specimen is, but then this is also how old they are in terms of like how long they've been trying to push themselves at like as hard as possible for.
Absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree more in that. When I do start integrating it back in, I guess like I set a date so that I can get that answer. But that answer does like, I don't know if it's like going to be a hurt to my ego or anything like that, but it's something that I'm going to have to adjust with from a previous mindset of how I know what I was capable of physically. Hey, maybe I return back to full, you know, grit, and that's great. I'm certain that's not the case because that's just what time does to us. But yeah, that to me is also why I kind of put a date because I do want an answer on that. But again, it's just kind of keeping my distance and waving at the pretty girl and letting her know I'll be there soon. I don't know if that analogy is gonna go over well with the listeners, but whatever. It's the one I used.
Okay, so injury or not, if you are doing parkour, what is parkour to you? Or another way to ask this would be, what are you trying to pursue the most? Like what type of movements? What is that? Is there like a picture? Is there like a word?
Like previous to injury too, encompassing it all.
I'm saying if you are injury free and you are like you're yourself right now, and you're just like, what would I do if I came up to you and I said like I can inject this thing into your knees?
You have that?
You will be.
Do you have that? Comment below if you have something you're going to inject into my knee and we're going to feel great. No, okay.
And if you don't feel nothing and it's going to fix you forever and you're just going to be like reset.
Yeah,
what are you trying to do?
Yeah, that's like an excellent question. I think just to kind of be very self-absorbed about that is that what I was doing the summer of 2020 and going out with my friends on the bikes. Like that was such a good summer. That was like that summer, honestly, it was the closest thing to like an elementary school summer that I've ever had in my adulthood. And you know, I'm sorry if people from my workplace are listening, but like I wasn't working. And at that point, okay, it was during COVID. Okay, so it's like I will work now, but it like was the greatest because like the weather was amazing. I was thinking back, like March to May was like 20 degrees or something. Like it was crazy. And that summer, sorry, you asked a question. I'm going way too long with it. But the idea there is like that year of summer of training for me was really special because I felt like I was really finding what my style was. And I put together a video with like yourself was included in that and stuff. And that video really reflected the fun of the summer, but also where I felt like I was finding myself in this crazy community and world of parkour, which was coming to an environment, seeing what I was fully capable of. So I wasn't trying to progress capability, but what I was doing was finding the environment where I could place what I was capable of. And then, that would turn into maybe 3 or 4 different types of movement that I'm comfortable with and be able to pass through that environment. So not just like stick to a challenge or have something that is world elite level parkour, but it was something that was for me that I could take away from that spot. I don't know if that's a good explanation, but that would be, I want to get back to that, right? If I had full capability, because I think at my age, again, I'm not trying to push the boundaries of what a big jump or a large feat could do. It's more just seeing with what the tools I already have in my toolkit can do in different environment, right? That excites me. And it did that summer, and it kind of does for me right now in my preparation for getting back into things.
Do you need risk or danger to fully enjoy parkour?
I mean, yeah, I think so. I think there's got to be a component to it, but I think that like how you're feeling on a day could determine what risk means. Your environment and what, again, going back to like the environment you find and the skills you want to put towards that environment could determine the level of risk that's there as well too. So like, if I went and looked at that video, Safety First, by the way, this is the video I'm referring to from 2020. Safety First, I did a descent at UBC, the like garage, the car park. That's like, it has those like nubs coming out of it. I don't know if you remember. That was something, fully capable of, higher risk, so much fun because there's a ground level prep and it's just, no one had done it. That's kind of an exciting thing. So it was fun. But at the same token, there was lots of like what we're discussing, more like flat, like linear style parkour in that video as well, that showcase like a degree of what I'm capable there as well too. Lower risk, same level of excitement for me, to be honest. So does it need it? Yes and no. I think it just like, how classic is that? It depends. It depends on, I think, environment and your day, how you're feeling. Do you think people like enough in parkour? Do you think they check in on themselves before their sessions?
Like emotionally?
Yeah. How often? Like, because for me, like when I'm going to like a car park like that, I'm checking in. Like I'm seeing how do you feel today? Like, do you think that happens enough?
Yeah, I know. Like, so today, according to my watch, I had a great sleep, but feel a bit sluggish. Yeah, like I don't feel what it's telling me I'm supposed to be feeling. I'm supposed to be like super ready to train today. So if I'm going to train today, I tend to need to know how I feel like post warm up. Maybe I'll have a little bit of caffeine, but like get warmed up and then see how I feel.
But could that determine what your session looks like?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, and as I've like got more, not like age mature, but as I've got more mature with sessioning and training, I kind of know like, all right, this is going to be a good day to go try this. However, if you're trying to get a project done and you got a deadline,
no, of course. Yeah, that's a completely different scenario, right? But
I can't think of who to attribute this type of quote to, but I've heard before, like, like people that have won Olympic gold medals have probably done it off of like terrible sleep the night before,
or won big fights or whatever, right?
And so if you're trying to do something that's like exceptional for you, you probably need to be able to get it done, even if you're, or at least try to go out and put in the work to get it done, even if you're not feeling the best. You might surprise yourself, but in general, I think if I'm going out to train, I'm going to kind of know what sort of day I'm going to have or what sort of things I'm going to try based on how I'm feeling, because particularly like emotionally, that's like the biggest thing. Like if I'm emotionally just feeling, I don't know, not like, just a little sad, not gonna have a good session. It's just point blank. But if I
sorry, I don't mean to laugh at that.
That's what it is. There's no better word for it. But
no, of course, yeah.
But if I'm and happy me is usually I get a little.
You get silly.
I get a little giddy.
Yeah, you get silly when you're happy. Yeah. I've noticed that actually.
Yeah.
Right. And you know that you're happy when you're being silly at like a community jam. Like, because you often are very reserved. As far as like being vocal and stuff, like, like you'll communicate with people, but it won't be like known. But when you're happy, you can tell the silliness comes out, right?
So I'll just vibe off of other people that tend to want to be silly with me, and it's usually a good time, right?
That's good. Yeah.
But I had to ask you that risk question because I know for me, I think as time goes on, I know that I definitely don't enjoy parkour as much when there's not risk involved. I remember I was hanging out with Tim Champion one day and talking about Vancouver spots, and he was having this issue where like he didn't enjoy his time in Vancouver because he said the spots weren't great. And I was like, well, we've been taking you to the community spots where they're flatter and stuff. And then I took him to some stuff that was like a little scarier, and then he had a good time, and I think he's looking forward to coming back. But I remember I can't remember when he said it, but he just kind of smiled and said, I need more risk in my life. And that was it. And you look at the kind of things he does and the lifestyle that guy lives, and that's absolutely it. And for me, I would like to pursue risk for as long as I can, because that's a big part of what I've grown to love about parkour.
Well, it's like it is definitely integral, and like I think about like my professional side, working with guys in construction, or people. I'm now currently working with some consultants who are doing things where it's like risk is measured much differently in like real world scenarios, where you base like how the likelihood of something wrong to happen goes and what the severity is, and where those 2 points meet is kind of how you would evaluate that. And I think that like that's why I was discussing it, why I say it depends, because it really, do you need it for it to happen? No, you can go do parkour. It's relatively risk-free. Mm-hmm. But as I think you progress, that's when it starts becoming kind of integral, because you need something to overcome that gives that enough dopamine for you to keep coming back, right? And I don't know, like that relation to like real world, like working and how it's evaluated, I often will carry into like my check-ins. Like, okay, like what am I up to today, or where's the spot? And then I can kind of evaluate where I'm at and see what I want to end up doing that day. Kind of, do I want to go up and look at the stuff that's kind of higher, or do I want to stay down on the curbs, or like I think Cole Harbour is a great example of that, where the variability is kind of right there. Like there's a lot of like the building structure there on the side, and if you really wanted to, you could interact with it. But then there's the wheelchair ramp. That's right.
Which is the main
what I mean? Which is the main part of the spot, right? Like, so it's like when you're there, you're like oftentimes gravitating towards the ramp, right?
So I had a conversation with Tom, actually the last episode that he was on, about...
I miss you, Tom.
About fatherhood, and he might change his tune. He might change his tune very quickly, because this was before baby was born. Baby's born now. Tom has a healthy baby girl, which I'm assuming he's going to share with people at some point.
Did you just share it? Has he shared it?
I'm not saying baby's name. So,
okay, all right. Fair.
I'm going away from details, but healthy baby girl, and he's thrilled and everything. But before baby was born, he was quite stressed, and it was very clear. Like there was a lot. I felt like he was a bit. There's a big contrast between just I've seen him a couple times since she's been born, and there's a big contrast between like how he is right now versus how he was like just the weeks before.
Full nesting stage.
Yeah, like
it's stressful.
He seems a lot more positive now.
That's good.
But anyway, so he was kind of negative about, I guess is one way to take it, about his kid and, you know, future possibly kids doing parkour. And one of the things he was touching on was that he wants them to do parkour because it's like a functional practice and it's a good thing to experience as a kid to just have like life skills. But he doesn't like the idea of them pursuing parkour at the highest level, and one of the big reasons being the risk and the danger. And he kind of owned up to have it being like contradictory to that, because he has done things that he looks back on now, where a big example being in Ascension 2, the very last ascent he did had this like high exposure dyno where if anything goes wrong, you know, that's curtains for Tom.
Yeah.
And
it's critical. It's critical to say the least. Right?
It seems like he's having a tough time wrapping his head around one of his children pursuing something like that. And I'm curious for you, as a father who's been a father for a minute now.
Yeah.
How?
I mean, there's lots more fathers that are more experienced than I am, but yeah, my son's 2.5, and I think there's also like, I don't want to get into it too much, but there is a difference too about being a father of a little girl and a father of a little boy too. Like you're, there, it's not even something that you can control. Like as a dad, as a father, there's a little bit. It's not as if one way is better than the other, but you have different feelings about how the child's going to grow up and be exposed to and whatnot. But there are obviously so many more similarities than just that though. So, but either way, for me, I'm kind of very similar tone. I have different reasons why I don't think parkour is great to pursue at the top level. Risk is definitely something.
Okay, let's talk about let's open the whole thing.
Okay, like, career-wise, I don't think at this point it's something that I would say, hey, if they want to do it, for sure, but I'm going to exemplify that there's not really a great career path in parkour, especially as like somebody who's an athlete. I mean, there's probably avenues as far as like owning the gym or coaching or things like that maybe are a little bit more steady as far as work goes.
Can I counter your career thing real quick? Because you were, again, I think we'll talk about like the 2020 era, sort of, like you were doing a lot of parkour. You were training a lot, but you had a separate career.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. I always have made sure that this isn't priority number one. It's passion number one, right?
So how do you feel then if like your child pursuing it as a passion, or they're still doing it pretty much full time, but they have like a full-time career outside of it?
That's for me, that's different. So that's I think that's something that you almost as a parent to a degree you may have a bit of control over, but to a degree you don't at the same time, like, because then you become somebody who's like anti whatever your kid's doing. So it's like, it's the same thing as like any other sport for me, realistically, because kids will be able to eventually have enough experience that they're able to navigate through different types of risk. And I'd be hypocritical to think I need to like close the doors on different things that they want to get up to. It just wouldn't make sense. And I say that too, like from somebody who, like my dad was obviously worried about me doing different things and still is. If you ever look at some of the videos, my dad will comment and be like, well, I just threw up watching me like come down a large like descent or whatever, you know, and he still, but he knows that I've had enough whereabouts to A, prep, or B, experience with the spot or with the type of movement that he knows that I'd be smart about my actions, right? Now, it doesn't mean something can't happen. Like, something can happen. But going back to it is like, you might as well stop kids. If the mentality is to stop them from doing parkour, they should stop doing football. Your kid should never get into an MMA cage. You know what I mean? Like, there's a number of different activities that, if you're going to consider risk, are maybe as risky, if not more, and your kid will just end up a video game professional, which isn't a bad career, but it's just not, like, you have to be able to let them, to a degree, just navigate the life of risk that we all kind of get exposed to, right?
Yeah, I mean, I could say that there's plenty of sports where if you're pursuing getting the most performance out of yourself at the highest level, that it's very risky. Like we'll say dangerous even, right? Yeah. Parkour being easily in that. I do think we're entering into a realm of parkour where it's tough to say, but like there is like a style of parkour you can do that is not the same risk at all, that doesn't involve the heights and stuff. But then there's people that like blend it. So I'll use someone like Kevin Franzen or Matt McCreary as an example. Fishboy and Dr. Eel. Yeah. Right. Fishboy and Dr. Eel both pursue a very, what I'll call like almost parkour dance like style. Parkour B-boys. Yeah. There's a lot of expression and attitude to what they're doing, and so they could have a session where it's like very not risky looking. Maybe there's not even a flip. Maybe it's just kind of like interacting with the structure. But then they also are both able to pursue things that are very risky, and then they kind of like merge the two.
Right. Yeah.
And so I'm curious for the two of them, if parkour is enjoyable if they are just doing like the expressive structural interaction stuff. And I was kind of touching on this earlier, and I said like I'm really trying to be careful with how they frame this, because I'm not saying one is better than the other. Like they both can exist and both be parkour, but they are very different. And there's a different approach to the session when you're doing both. And for me personally, I don't think I can do the wholesale, like I can't do just the expressive side. I do very little of it to begin with. But,
right, yeah.
Or at least if I do it, it looks different. The way I express myself, if I'm doing parkour and trying to creatively interact with structures and expressing myself, it looks very different than how some other people do it. But that alone doesn't feel like enough to me. There needs to be risk.
I feel like if you put your Mexican wrestling mask on, it'd be real good. Your expressive. Bring back Mango, man. No, but I totally understand what you're saying, and if that was what was just being projected and being polarized, you might even have more buy-in from parents pushing their kids towards parkour, because it's like viewed as more like this expressive art, where it's like, if I talk to anybody, including people at my like office, they're like, oh, you like jump off buildings. It's like, I like to be expressive, actually, but like, it's like, so it's difficult, right? As to what is actually like considered risky, because to me, like going off axis or like over my head, probably similar to you, is scary. And like, that's more scary to me than some of like the staircase descents that I've completed, so I don't know. It's it is relative, I think, to a degree. But one thing I did want to say about like with what's happening with parkour, and probably so much more different than when you started parkour, is like, I almost think having my kid when he turns 5, getting in here, being with coaches like yourself, with Tom, with Lucas, that to me has so much more benefits at 5 years old than the idea of what he'll get up to as far as risky activity when he's 15 to 20 years old, like being a boy out there, I think that there's a certain level, obviously physically, but the interaction with coach, having strong male or female figures there, teaching him about, levels of respect as well too. And I kind of equated almost similar to, it's a little bit more less stringent, but equated similar how like, I would hope he would get the same thing if he went and started doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Because I'd love him to enter that maybe sphere as well too, like there's so many good qualities in that risky activity that I feel like those kind of outweigh what somebody will get back from the actual sport itself, right? So all things to consider when you're a parent, because being a parent, there's a number of other things that you have to consider other than just risk. Like, oh my gosh, we got all kinds of stuff that we got to talk about. And when you're doing it in a dual parent situation, you have to consider what I have to consider what Jonah considers risky, and consider her perspective as well too. Because maybe I grew up being physical and doing all types of crazy stuff. Well, she might not have, right? And what she wants to see and what I want to see they have to align to allow Cove to do the things he wants to do as well too, right? So yeah, can't forget about the ladies. They have a big say in what's going on as well, if not more say than what's going on as well too, right? So yeah.
Well, thanks for answering that.
Yeah, I mean, I did my best. I don't know, like maybe you're just all confused, but that's
no, I think, I mean, okay, like if we simplify, it's like wholesale, are you more in favor of your kid doing something risky like parkour at the highest level, like pursuing it at a high level, or does like the fear of what might happen control your opinion of that more?
No, you know what, I'll just say, right, like, I want him to just do what he does. You know, like that's real. I don't want to confine my son, or nor do I want to confine anyone to what I view as risky and project my feelings onto that, I think. And then in saying so, like, I'd want to ensure that I coordinate with my partner to be sure that she's on the same page as well too. But that's kind of my end all. I think I equate that more in, like, I know who's it. I heard you guys talking a few episodes ago about the kid and his dad's always there.
Oh boy.
Carson. No, is it Carson, or it's like there's another dad who's like, and then you guys were doing that same jump from Renaissance.
So you're talking about Chris and his dad, Mike.
Mike. Like, Mike definitely sits there and he's a bit worried, but he's also like, send it.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like that'd be where I am. I don't know, maybe I'm not the same as that guy, but what I'm suggesting is, like, I'd be there supporting him and accept the consequences just like I did when I'm up there doing it, right? So,
kind of what I expected from you.
Yeah.
I'm not a parent, but I have coached kids for, it's been like 16 years now. I think I've been coaching kids doing parkour, and so I've watched kids grow up. You know, if I say like 16, that means there's kids that I've met when they're 8 years old and they're like close to 30 now, right?
Right.
That's the wrong math, but we'll just go with it. Anyways, so I feel like I've watched kids grow up, and I've watched them like progress and pursue more risk, and even pursue risk like very early on. And if anything, like I get torn, because like sometimes it does excite me, but I have had moments where like I am, and that particular incident where I was saying I was trying to get Chris to do like this jump with me. I wasn't worried at all, because I was informed more than Mike about what his son was capable of.
Of course,
and very specific to that challenge. I was like, this is so low risk for him.
Right.
It just looks the way it is. I feel like because of there was like a mobility and body type thing going on there where I feel like it's actually riskier for me to do this jump to the edge of this drop than it is for Christopher in that regard.
Of course.
But yeah, I have been in some moments where a kid I get excited because, you know, a kid is like, oh, I want to do this one day. And then I'm like, oh, that's really cool. And then the day comes where they actually are showing me the thing they want to do. And they're like, can you film a clip of it? And I'm like, oh, this is like, it's weird. It's weird. Like, you know, you're just trusting them, that like trusting yourself in that, like, okay, I've helped them prepare to this point and I've mentored them in whatever way possible. And then also trusting that they know their abilities and that they're going to be able to execute. It is a weird one. Yeah,
because like you also don't want to be the coach or parent who overestimates and like, yeah, go do it. Yeah, you got this.
Yeah.
Because then, like, if something does go wrong, you're almost like the guilt, right? There could be guilt associated with your like push. So I think, like I said, like you need to step back and like, to a degree, have influence and be supportive, but the other hand, like, my dad wasn't holding my hand my whole life.
Yeah.
You know, neither was my mom, right? So it's like, you figure out enough too. All right, so I don't know.
All right, I want to circle back to something here because we have to wrap this up soon. But before we start recording, you were mentioning your glasses.
I was worried about the glare.
I
don't look. I just
did. You just start wearing glasses?
So, okay, I've always needed them I always get far sight and near sight mixed up. For whatever
So do
reason.
I, but okay, like, so what can you see well and what can't you see well?
Okay. Yeah, like I can't read far away. Mm-hmm. And also this computer screen bothers me now. And that's why I had to start wearing them more. With this new job, I'm like on the computer an extreme amount of more. Mm-hmm. So I was like, put on my glasses and I'm like, oh, this is way better. And then I went and got these ones because I just wanted to see if my prescription had changed, and it did since the last time. So I used to like have to wear them at night driving and maybe like in a movie theater. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's changed.
I've seen you with shades a lot, so it's not like a new look.
Right. Yeah. I'll definitely wear like safety glasses and stuff like that for work and everything. But this is definitely new. It's weird.
Yeah. Do you think you'll train with them on?
No. Okay. I was thinking about that actually, and whether or not, because I remember a friend of mine back in the day when we were skeet shooting, we were like shooting our shotguns, and he was like, dude, you need to get like your prescription glasses done for your safety glasses. He's like, you are shooting terrible. You're like missing the skeets a lot. And I was like, okay. So I was like wondering it's funny you asked that because I'm like, maybe I might have to get goggles, do the old Sean Higgins, the goggle or the strap back. Who else? There's a couple other guys, flip heavy guys that have to wear them.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see.
Because I was talking about, again, the way I like to describe it with being able to do a challenge is being able to see it. And Tom has been ripping on me for a while now because he's aware that I need glasses.
You need glasses.
So I cannot see things well far away.
Oh, wow.
And so he's like, maybe it'll improve your parkour. Maybe it'll do something.
I know like the surgery, I don't know if it's like covered by benefits, but apparently it's like, if you have the finances for it, it's the way to go. Like, I know Jonah got it and she's like...
I feel like I would have a tough time wearing... After doing parkour for so long without wearing something on my face.
I know, yeah. Well, how do you feel about a watch?
So that's a big change.
Totally that's one of your big changes.
Yeah,
lately, right?
so I've... when I started parkour, I was wearing a watch a lot, and I stopped. And then recently, like, I wanted to have a watch for, like, training metrics and heart rate and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I'm totally fine having something on my wrist.
That's good.
If anything, actually, if I take it off for a bit, I'll be like, where'd the thing go that was supposed to be on?
Fair enough.
On my wrist?
It's part of you.
Yeah. But can I see those for a second?
Yeah.
Okay, so just this is gonna be weird, but okay, so this is scary because I'm putting these on and it's like
well, when I take
it's
them
clearer.
Oh yeah, I can't see it.
Oh man, but what do we think? Is this a good look for me?
I think so. Let me see. They might be a little bit big for you.
Probably.
Yeah, because I'm a bigger dude. But yeah, I mean, I had to go trendy. Like I was just like whatever. But yeah. So.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for coming on, man.
No, thank you. Like I said, I've been watching this since before we even spoke to each other before. So it's kind of it's an honor and a pleasure. Yeah. And it's cool to hang out with you, man. We haven't been hanging out as much lately, so it's good to see you.
Yeah. So Tom is going to be back soon, but we've been talking, and one thing we would like to do is have just another person in one of these seats on a regular basis. So if you want to see more of Wes, drop a comment below. Let us know. As always, if you're not subscribed yet, what are you doing? Hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you next week.